ratio, but able to squeak through. But yeah, we're going to be going into this match. So I know what Ben's going to be bringing here, but we're going to be seeing what Aditya is going to be bringing as well.
Yep, we are looking from Aditya's side. So he'll be bringing a team of Rillaboom, Togekiss, Cinderace, Braviary, which is something that's been ticking up in the usage stats, Incineroar and Tyranitar, while Ben with a team of Cinderace, Indeedee, Rillaboom, Bisharp, Dracozolt, and Mimikyu. So I'll be honest with you, Jamie, it looks like you've been building Ben's team with him.
Well, Dracozolt is probably my favorite new Pokemon going into this new generation, being able to do a huge amount of damage with that Hustle ability, but really wants to be making use of the Dynamax so that you ignore that accuracy drop that comes with the Hustle. But then you've got the Pokemon like that Cinderace that also wants to be going for the Dynamax or the Gigantamax, and you've got that common pairing that we see now with the Cinderace and the Bisharp, a very, very threatening lead. But you've also got the Braviary on Aditya's side of the field, or could also pair with that Cinderace, going with the Defiant ability, as well as the Bisharp, just a slightly alternative way of getting that ability onto the field. But then the Braviary would be a Pokemon that you really want to be Dynamaxing as well to be able to make use of those Airstream boosts.
Yeah, I think Aditya is going to have to be smart in his team selection not to bring 2 or more Pokemon that rely on the boost that you get from Dynamax, and that's something that can really kind of force your hand a little bit on how you play a team if you bring too many Pokemon that rely on it. If Ben leaves the Dracozolt on the bench, then he can do something like Cinderace. If he doesn't Dynamax Cinderace early, then maybe Aditya can kind of mentally start to prep for something like the Dracozolt to come in and sweep using that Hustle ability. That said, the leads have taken the field, and it's going to be Togekiss and Cinderace versus Bisharp and Cinderace. So no immediate boost on the Bisharp. I think that's absolutely key, and obviously we're looking at it from Aditya's side, and it looks like he's just starting off early with the Dynamax on his side.
Yeah, both Cinderaces here probably wanting to go for that Dynamax or the Gigantamax on that first turn, usually going for those Airstream boosts to try and boost up the speed of your partner as well. Bisharp, we don't know whether it's going to be moving before this Togekiss, but it would be threatening it down with some super effective damage from that Iron Head as well. And depending on who Cinderace would be able to move first, if they are both going for those Airstream boosts, would maybe allow the Bisharp to be able to attack before the Cinderace or the Togekiss to attack as well before Ben Cinderace. But Ben is going to be going for that Gigantamax with his Cinderace here.
His Gigantamax goes first. That could be an indication about the speeds, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's just actually a tie, something that's very common in the Cinderaces. Aditya's following up. We'll see if it's Dynamax or Gigantamax. I've seen some interesting discussions recently about, do you actually go with Gigantamax if you're not carrying a fire move? But it's going to be Dynamax on this side, so a little bit different. That's why they look different. But still very threatening as well. Wouldn't shock me if they were both just playing the Airstream game anyway. So Cinderace on Ben's side does move first again. There's Max Airstream. Turns into flying, and it gets a speed boost first. So that could be key. Obviously, the dynamic speed change is really, really important here. Togekiss takes a lot of damage for its troubles in this one, as the speed boost applies to both. Something that's really, really cool. And it takes a little bit of damage from the Life Orb. Immediately, that means Bisharp can follow up with the Iron Head. So Togekiss is immediately taken out from the field of play. That speed boost, so essential here from Ben's Cinderace. He does level it up, though, Aditya, with the Max Airstream of his own. But he's going afterwards, and he's already lost a Pokemon for his troubles.
Yeah, so only the Cinderace on Aditya's side will have that speed boost, but both the Cinderace and the Bisharp will have the speed boost on Ben's side. So even the Pokemon that Aditya chooses to bring in here will be moving slower than all of the Pokemon on the field. And we'll have to see if the Cinderace, both of the Cinderaces want to go for another Airstream to try and still be the fastest Pokemon on the field. And the Bisharp, if it is carrying the Focus Sash, that will still be intact as it hasn't been attacked yet. And this Incineroar coming in is going to activate that Defiant ability on the Bisharp as well. So going to be reducing the attack of the Cinderace, but increasing the attack of the Bisharp. And that's one of the reasons why the Cinderace-Bisharp combination is so effective. You really want to be reducing the attack damage coming out from that Cinderace. But if you go for that with something like the Intimidate, then you're really going to be boosting up this Bisharp and still going to be able to do a lot of damage. So you lose some damage on the Cinderace, but a lot of damage gained on the Bisharp now, and would still really be able to threaten down this Cinderace. It has turned into a flying type, so would be able to hit it with a powerful move whether that's going to be the Lash Out or the Iron Heads coming out into the Cinderace, and we'll have to see if there's going to be any more Airstreams.
Well, Bishop gets what it wants in the Defiant boost, but it's followed up with a Fake Out, so not able to attack this turn. That's something that's kind of a problem. That said, the Cinderace over on Aditya's side moves first and follows up with a Max Knuckle. So the combination Fake Out, Max Knuckle does mean, you know, it's going to get easily knocked out there, making sure that any Focus Sash is broken, and even though he gave it the boost, he's able to immediately remove it from play, which I think is really key here. So there's that Life Orb recall on his side. That does mean, though, that Ben Cinderace is able to fire out a Max Airstream unopposed, meaning he is going to be one step ahead in this kind of speed war that these Cinderace are playing, and gets a huge amount of damage down as well. It is at much lower health than it probably would like to be, but it did bring Aditya's down so low. It'll be able to pick it up with whatever it wants in this next turn. So the Pokemon count level at 3-3, but the Bishop scare is kind of dealt with through that combination of doubling up into it.
We did see that both Cinderaces are going to be speed tying here, as the Cinderace on Aditya's side did move first, and that was actually detrimental for him this time, turning him into a fighting type before the Airstream hit it, and would have taken a lot less damage if Ben's Cinderace would have moved first with that Airstream. And now the Cinderace has been put very low, almost certainly going to be in range of one of those Grassy Glides coming out from the Rillaboom. The Incineroar would still be threatening down that Rillaboom as well, but then we'll have to see if the Cinderace is also carrying access to that Max Knuckle to be able to threaten down that Incineroar with some good damage, and also increase the damage output from the Rillaboom as well. Cinderace could, on Ben's side, could choose to just target down. Cinderace on Aditya's side as well, as just faking out the Incineroar to stop any damage coming out from that turn. So it does still look like quite a nice position for Ben, because his Cinderace will now definitely be moving first before the Cinderace on Aditya's side.
Yeah, and Aditya forced to switch out his Cinderace before he's even finished with those Dynamax turns. Clearly, that's scared of maybe that follow-up Airstream coming in. So not always what you want to see when you're trying to play around these Dynamaxes. That does mean a third and final Max Airstream could land and just cause a really big speed discrepancy here. Rillaboom will, as you mentioned, Jamie, fake out the Incineroar, keeping it safe from anything. The Cinderace knows it already had the advantage. It's going to keep that advantage, but land a Max Knuckle here. Max Knuckle could be a huge issue if it's heading towards Tyranitar, which it is! And no Focus Sash, no nothing to save it there. Just means Tyranitar's taken out as soon as it arrived on the field. A huge turn from Ben Markham there, completely getting the advantage. And that's, a really good decision to say, well, if you stay in as your Cinderace, I'm going to be able to knock you out anyway. But if you bring in your Tyranitar, I'm going to knock you out for sure. So really great turn there for Ben, I think, and completely cementing his position as being in the driving seat.
Yeah, really, really nice play going for the Knuckle there. The Cinderace on Aditya's side was very, very low, and almost certainly going to be in range of that Knuckle. Didn't need to go for another Airstream. It was already faster as it clicked the Airstream button 2 times, and it was definitely moving first, boosting up the attack of the Rillaboom as well. Cinderace not commonly carrying Protect means that this Rillaboom would be able to pick off the Cinderace with a Grassy Glide if it isn't carrying that Protect. And now that the Cinderace has boosted its attack with the Max Knuckle, usually off that high jump kick, probably going to be able to take the knockout on the Incineroar as well if it chooses to go for that. So we'll have to see if that is the option that the Cinderace chooses to go for, and high jump kick is always one of those risky moves. If it was able to connect, it would do a huge amount of damage, but if it were to miss, that Cinderace is below half HP, so it would take itself out in the process, and then that would open up the Incineroar to be able to attack this Rillaboom. So we'll have to see if the Cinderace does have access to that high jump kick and be able to take out this Incineroar.
Aditya spent a lot of time in the menus there, looking through his moves, looking through his options, and in the end, decides just to forfeit this match, realizing he's fallen a little bit too far behind and isn't going to be able to catch that one up. I think being behind on the Airstreams was a problem, and being very, very low on that Cinderace was an issue too. That previous turn was so key in Ben being able to command the game and deal with that Tyranitar, which could have been slightly problematic otherwise. So Ben taking a lead in this set. I think a lot to be learned from Aditya. Maybe trying to avoid those speed ties. I know from personal experience that they're a headache to play in. And maybe he has to find a way around that in this following kind of turn, and this turn 0, as we call it, this team preview side of the game.
Yeah, the speed tie interactions between the Cinderaces very awkward. When you go for those Airstreams, the first Pokemon or the first Cinderace to fire off that Airstream could let its partner Pokemon be able to move first before the opposing Cinderace. That is what we saw with the Bisharp able to fire off that Iron Heads before the Cinderace on Aditya's side was able to move. And then you've got the awkward speed interactions that we saw the next turn. Aditya's Cinderace was able to move first, go for that Knuckle, but turn itself into a fighting type, being able to be hit super effectively for that by that Airstream. And that really allowed the Cinderace on Ben's side to be able to go for the Knuckle for the KO, which covered the Tyrannosaurus switch in really, really well. So we'll have to see if both players opt for that Cinderace speed type interaction again. But it is always such an awkward one to face. And if you can come up with some alternative to go against the Cinderace, that would be the way to go, but there's not too many options that Aditya has on his side of the field to really threaten down that Cinderace before it's able to fire off some of those max moves. He does have the Incineroar to be able to intimidate it, but then it could just be paired with that Bisharp once again to receive that Defiant boost in return for that Intimidate.
That Defiant boost is so scary on both sides, and you've just got to be so smart about it. The Incineroar is something you really want to bring in. You want it to do with that Rillaboom, you want it to do with that Bisharp, but you just can't be giving away those boosts without an immediate answer to them, and Ben played really well into that. He knew that the fake out combination with the Max Knuckle was going to be there from Aditya's side, and immediately just said, well, if you're just targeting down this Bisharp, I'm going to get another Airstream boost and punish you in the following turns with that. So really smart, and as you mentioned, that speed tie was so painful for him when he wasn't able to land. He was able to Max Knuckle and get the knockout, but then he won that speed tie and got punished by the Max Airstream.
You know, there's no Bisharp coming out from Ben's side, and Aditya did decide to lead with that Incineroar, so able to get the Intimidate onto the Cinderace, and no Defiant boost going to be activated. We're going to see a Psychic Seed come out from the Indeedee, so Bisharp its special defenses here, but it is facing down two physical attackers, so not going to be too important here, but it would be able to redirect any moves that the Cinderace would want to go for into the opposing Cinderace, and Indeedee isn't going to be making use of the speed boost coming out from the Airstream that well, not compared to that Bisharp that could have been intimidated and activated that Defiant. It won't be able to threaten down the Incineroar with an expanding force. It would still be able to do reasonable damage to the Cinderace if the Cinderace was able to go for an Airstream as well. Would have to depend on how the Indeedee would be trained, whether it would be able to fire off an attack before the Cinderace moved, whether it would want to go for a Knuckle to increase its attack output, but probably would want to be careful of that because you don't want to be taking an expanding force. But Dracozolt is actually going to be brought to this game, so not really caring about the Cinderace going for the Dynamax. Dracozolt is probably going to be the Pokemon to Dynamax for Ben.
Ben doesn't want to play the Cinderace mirrors anymore, even though he was winning early last time. He lost the speed tie. Just doesn't want to get involved in that and just wants to completely avoid it. The Cinderace on Aditya's side will Dynamax, so it could be an interesting turn depending on how the targeting is going in this one. Cinderace Max Airstreams immediately, becomes a flying type with Libero, is something that's good to track when you're playing out these games. That will land on the Indeedee. Won't get a knockout, won't bring it down all the way, still in the yellow, but a good amount of damage down as well. Cinderace's speed will rise there, and that helps out the Incineroar too. Indeedee will fire back with the expanding force. No damage down on Incineroar, but as you mentioned, a decent little chunk on the Cinderace. Every little bit is going to help out, and Incineroar will follow up with a Burning Jealousy. So the Burning Jealousy landing on both Indeedee and Dracozolt will get a burn over there on Indeedee as well. So an interesting one, to say the least, but Dracozolt in a good position, I think.
Yeah, I'm really curious that the Indeedee got burned by that. It did just go for an expanding force, so looks like the Psychic Seed activating is enough to activate the burn on that Burning Jealousy, which is a really cool interaction to note. But the Burning Jealousy would have been able to burn that Cinderace. If it would have gone for something like an Airstream, it would have got rid of its fire typing and boosting its speed as well, which would have allowed the Cinderace to get burns. But Ben reading into that very well, preserving that Cinderace in the back. He's taken a lot of damage on the Indeedee. It would be in range of any attack that Aditya would want to go for, but it is still on the field and would still be able to redirect an attack that the Cinderace would want to go for, which will allow this Dracozolt to stay relatively safe. Most likely going to be Dynamaxing the Dracozolt, as you don't want to be dealing with that hustle, but you still get the increased damage output from the hustle ability as well. And if Cinderace wants to still be boosting its speed, it will remain a flying type, be very, very open to the electric moves that could come out from the Dracozolt, but at the same time it could just go on the offensive with those Wormwinds to reduce the attack of both these physical attackers.
with the reveal of Burning Jealousy, you have to be careful about how you're trying to boost your speed up as well. And that is a cool interaction actually with the Seed and Burning Jealousy. Didn't know about that. Indeedee is keen to keep itself safe though, as it decides, or keep its partner safe rather, when it decides to follow me there. It will take a Max Knuckle for its troubles, but it's very, very low already, and the Max Knuckle there, easy enough, just able to do that last tick of damage and get it all the way down. Cinderace and Incineroar though, getting attack boosts are going to be kind of key here. They are both Pokemon that need to start firing back at this Dracozolt. But as you mentioned, Dracozolt does have access to electric type moves, obviously. Max Lightning into the Cinderace doesn't even need it to be a flying type. Jamie just manages to pick up even on the fighting type Cinderace. We'll be curious though how much this Incineroar can fire back with after the Max Knuckle boost.
Yeah, did get an increased stage of attack, so maybe be able to do a reasonable amount of damage. But we did see Burning Jealousy as well, so probably going to be a lot more defensive Incineroar, but actually able to do a reasonable chunk with the Darkness Lariat as well. Not opting for the Wormwinds to reduce the attack of the Incineroar back down. Instead, setting up the electric terrain, overwriting that psychic terrain. They're going to be increasing the damage output even further of this Dracozolt if it goes for more Max Lightnings, and really would be able to take out most Pokemon on Aditya's side of the field. He has used his Dynamax on the Cinderace, and Dracozolt is just so powerful, especially when it's in this electric terrain as well. It'll be able to deal out a huge amount of damage. Indeed, he has gone on the field for Ben's side of the field, so the Togekiss now coming in would be able to threaten down the Dracozolt, but Cinderace coming back in for Ben. It's got rid of the Intimidate drop on the Incineroar now, so going to be remaining at neutral, be able to threaten down both the Incineroar with a high jump kick, and maybe an Iron Head onto the Togekiss if it is carrying that coverage as well. It can't increase the speeds anymore because it would just have access to the bounce rather than the max airstream. Would have to see if the Dracozolt is carrying that area lace so that it can get a guaranteed hit off when it's not in its Dynamax form, but also gets those airstream boosts. But you would still need to worry about the Burning Jealousy that could still come out from the Incineroar. But Cinderace just came in and straight back out.
Yep. There's the switch immediately to the Rillaboom, so Ben maybe trying to kind of bait a certain type of attack out that he wants to deal with, maybe see if he can enforce Aditya to make plays he's not too comfortable with. He does change up the terrain though, some grassy terrain coming into play rather than the electric terrain that the Dracozolt just set up. Max Lightning though will immediately change that back as Togekiss is not going to be able to take that, immediately felled, and electric terrain's right back into play. So no grassy glides right now with priority, but no sleep either, which maybe was something he was thinking about with a potential yawn or something around that way. Incineroar parting shot, so just trying to get that damage down on Dracozolt. But Dracozolt's got one more turn of its Dynamax and it's still a really big threat.
Yeah, so fake out pressure coming in for Ben's side of the field with that Rillaboom, and Aditya's able to get his fake out pressure back with the Incineroar, able to parting shot the Dracozolt and get another Intimidate down. So the Dracozolt will be reduced a reasonable amount, but it'll still be able to dish out a huge amount of damage as it is so powerful with that hustle ability. Rillaboom's still going to be threatening down this Tyranitar, and it doesn't have access to its priority in Grassy Glide, but it would still be able to do a huge amount of damage. And we'll have to see who's going to be trained faster between the Rillabooms and the Tyranitar. But Rillabooms are usually faster than the Incineroar. If the Rillaboom just wants to click the fake out button, it really would be able to put a stop to either Pokemon on Aditya's side of the field. Whether it wants to stop the fake out on the Incineroar as well, or break it. No, we haven't seen a Focus Sash on the Tyranitar. It just came in on that Max Knuckle and got taken out in one shot. But the Dracozolt still having access to one turn of its Dynamax. It is facing down two physical attackers here and would be able to reduce their attack even further with a Max Whirlwind while still dishing out a huge amount of damage. And there's even still the Cinderace waiting in the back. We saw it had Max Knuckle, so it would have access to that high jump kick, and there's just two fighting types left on the field for Aditya.
Two Pokemon weak to fighting could be a problem. There's the fake out onto the Incineroar. As you mentioned, Max Wormwood will lower both the attacks. It's not huge damage. Those Intimidates and Parting Shots have started to add up a little bit for this Dracozolt, but bringing the Tyranitar down to just above half. Most importantly, though, its attack going down. Dracozolt avoids, so no damage on that one. Rillaboom will take a decent little chunk, but not enough to really be threatening knockouts or anything like that anytime soon. The Sandstorm damage going around, getting everyone a little bit lower and a little bit closer to getting knocked out. But most importantly, there's the end of Dynamax for Dracozolt. So Dracozolt has to kind of fish a little bit more to try and deal that big damage, and then go from there.
Yeah, but if it does hit with that Bulk Beak, probably going to be faster than this Incineroar, so it depends how they're trained on the Tyranitar as well. If it does connect, it is still in electric terrain, it would do a huge amount of damage. Rillaboom still threatens down the Tyranitar as well, even without the priority on the Grassy Glide. It would depend on how they're trained, and if the Rillaboom was faster, it would just be able to take out the Tyranitar reasonably well if it had access to that Wood Hammer as well. And so it's still looking like a very, very nice position for Ben. If he connects even one move with his Dracozolt in this position, he's almost certainly going to take the win. But then the hustle ability is very awkward, but in this case, it is able to connect with that Bolt Beak.
Yeah, huge damage, even after parting shots and intimidates as well, forcing Incineroar low enough to consume its berry, Citrus Berry in this instance. Rillaboom doesn't have access to Grassy Glide. It still has Woodhammer, though, and Woodhammer's going to easily tidy up that Tyranitar. So really putting himself in a great position. We know the damage output from this Incineroar is just not quite there. It's trying to fire back so desperately with a Darkest Lariat, one of the coolest animations in the game. That's not enough to deal with the Rillaboom either. So both these Pokemon on Ben's side of the field just sit in pretty, able to move before and attack this Incineroar. It's used its berry. It's not able to spread damage across 3 Pokemon enough to deal with it. And Aditya looks like he knows in that turn. He did give it